It was a smash hit. My name was in the papers. I was recognised in the street. And people sent me gifts at the theatre. Flowers, chocolates, dresses made of silk and satin. I had a telephone right by my bed. Can you imagine that? And the phone never stopped ringing. Everyone wanted to meet Josephine Baker.
This is Writer's Mosaic in Conversation. Sita Brahmachari talks to the author Katherine Johnson about writing fiction based on historical characters.
I want to sort of start really by, a lot of people are really fascinated, I know, by the seed that you felt like kind of made you into the writer that you are. And I know that your family history is something that you not necessarily draw on, but inspired you to think about the characters, the historical characters you've now placed in stories that maybe you didn't find when you were young.
I think what my heritage did for me was number one, I think when you're a writer, I'm not saying a lot of writers do look from things from the outside. So you're used to accessing whatever the mainstream culture is because we're all accessing the mainstream culture all the time. But, when I was growing up, there were no people like me in that mainstream culture.
You were born in 1963? 62?
62.
Yeah, in London?
In London, North London. I grew up in I was born in the front room, and my mum
Whereabouts? In which front room? Where?
In Muswell Hill. My dad came to Britain in 1947, not from Jamaica. He'd been in America, in New York, and he landed in Liverpool. He came on the SS Carthage, and he came to London. It was difficult. It was hard. I mean, I think it was hard for anyone who's not got money, but obviously it is, double if you are.
What was his vision in coming, do you think?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I mean, I know, there was a family story about why he left Jamaica and that he had a very bad time, and his brothers gave him some money to go to America, and he did orange picking in Florida, and then he went to New York, and he was quite political. He was a tailor, and then he came here ostensibly to see the Olympics in 1948 and stayed. I have actually at home got the annotated program of him watching the athletics that he wrote things down in, and like this notebook which he wrote, which I got from my parents' house after they died, which is
a little brown leather notebook.
Yeah, I'm showing it to camera.
It's beautiful.
The Negro in Britain, and it's amazing. I am going to read the first sentence because I think it's important. Anyway, this is what he says. He says, "The Negro can live unmolested and enjoy a very agreeable life in Britain, but he must accept a standard of ignorance which he will only find tolerable if his sense of humour is stronger than his conscience." That's sad.
I feel quite emotional, when you read that, and also with that in your hands.
Yeah, no, I know.
Because it feels to me when I read your historical fiction for young people that at the root of it is not wanting to cause young people pain by saying that this was part of the history, because you write about slave history from Olude Equiano from Africa. From the Caribbean to Britain, slave history in Britain as well, in some of your stories. But they're always with the Katherine Johnson ability you're writing about people, real people in history. But what you do when you hold that documentation in your hands is you sort of manifest that, what the power of being a writer is that what do we do with that? And
I've kept one of his suits because he was always impeccably dressed, beautifully dressed. I think my mother thought he was much better off than she imagined. And there's a very funny story of they're on honeymoon in Ireland, and he actually he saw some very nice tweed, and he bought a bit of tweed, and then they didn't have any more money. I think what is important about looking at history for me still, even though it's a very different world now for young people growing up in a lot of ways. I still, and you know, the representation that we have in culture is a million miles better than anything that was in the past. But I think it's still important to say that, you know, we are an important part of our nation's history.
It feels like when you read your books, like a book like Freedom, for example, it's the young person who the young person today can absolutely engage with, a young person that may not have equality, may be enslaved, may be having to make a journey. But ostensibly, it's a young person's character moving through history. And I'm interested to know how you sort of find that.
I think the one thing that I have kept from my childhood is righteous indignation.
Yes.
And a very wide current of righteous indignation. And, you know, it's very good to mine for work. Yeah, poems. I always loved, when I was a kid, I think poems were very accessible. And, you know, I was talking about my Jamaican heritage, but my Welsh heritage, poems were something. It wasn't something that was alien. Poetry was like normal, and it was something that you could do if you were a road builder or a school teacher or a, you know, the butcher in the village or the farmer in the village. You might write poetry, and that's a thing. And, you know, a lot of my Welsh cousins wrote poetry in Welsh and one at the Eisteddfod. If you've seen a book, even if it's in another language and it's got your uncle's name on, and you just think, wow, and it is possible. It's a bit like, I suppose, if somebody does surgery or hairdressing, or you just think that is possible.
I see this in your stories. The young people, they're looking around them to see what's available to them.
Mm-hmm.
The Curious Tale of Lady Caribou. She's from Dorset, the original.
Yeah.
So it was Mary
Wilcox. Baker before,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the story of Mary Wilcox. How did you come across that story? And just tell us a bit about...
Well, I'd written a story. I'd written a novel called Nest of Vipers, which is about a group of confidence tricksters. And you know, I love the film The Sting. There was a series on the telly, I think, called Hustle, which was about, you know, people only scamming people who are bad, you know. And so I wrote that book. And then somebody asked me, who are your favourite confidence tricksters, real ones from history? And I said, Princess Caribou. And I'd read the non-fiction book by John Bird. He did a lot of the research about Mary. And
so
wrote
Mary
a book
grew up in Devon?
In Dorset.
Oh, in Dorset,
and she was a cobbler's daughter, and she was a bit like...
She was mixed heritage as well.
Well, no, we don't know. She might well have been. We don't know. My retelling, that's why it's definitely fictionalised. The real story, she's a bit like Josephine Baker in that she's rushing headlong into life, and she gets a job in the city, which is the nearest big city, Dorchester, and then she gets a job in London, and she's basically a nanny. But what she loves is dressing up and other languages. There are some Orthodox Jewish people who live near her in Kennington in a big house, and she loves to hear them praying and singing, and she loves the dress of the Magdalene Society girls, and she loves pretending to be French and going out, and she does suffer. She suffers in love. She has a child, you know, the man doesn't stay with her. She gives her child up to the Foundling Museum. She has some kind of breakdown, but she does suffer horrible early 18th century surgery. God knows what that does to her. She goes to get her baby because she thinks she'll be able to look after it, and the baby's died. And then she decides to go back to the West Country, but she's begging, and she begs as a foreign beggar all the way. So she is what we would call, you know, white, not quite, but we don't know the root of her ethnicity. It's an amazing story.
As you're telling that story, and I remember reading it, there's a sort of real sense when you're reading your books of you know, you really want to page turn. You really want, they're adventure stories as well as historical. You want to know what is happening to this extraordinary character who's kind of making up her own life. And also there's a bit of you that kind of thinks, well, she's actually playing on that thing about well, what is the society allowing her to be?
Very much so. And you've got, a character like Mary who's pushing against the edges of what is possible and suffers.
And when did the habit of thinking, well, we were here, mixed heritage people were here, to me, when I read these stories, including your most recent story that's about to come out, which is, I've had the privilege to have an early read of, Dance of Resistance, the life story of Josephine Baker. Mm-hmm. It feels, when you're reading it, incredibly empowering to feel these stories being written into the landscape for a new generation of young people. But also not just the kind of prisms of stories that have been told. Maybe you've seen an iconic picture of her in a film or in a fashion context, but actually that she began in segregated America, that she came to Europe and Paris and then became free, that she then became, somebody that was a spy in the Second World War. The range of the woman, her relationships, all of this is in this amazing book that you've written. And there's a sort of dancing energy to your writing. It's hard when you talk about them, not when you read the stories, to convey that this also can be the adventure of somebody's life that you're moving through, and the joy that goes into that.
Yeah, I think there's, even though there's so much hardship, there is a lot of joy. And actually, she's one of those characters who's rushing out to meet her future. She's a bit like, she can't wait for her life away from the poverty of her childhood to start, and she's going to make things happen. And you can't read about her without feeling that energy in her.
From the beginning, even though she grew up in complete oppression and was almost sold into a sort of enslaved situation in her early life, her dancing spirit she just danced. And danced her way.
Yes, because she wasn't classically beautiful, was she?
No.
When she talks about being in the chorus line in New York, she's probably too dark-skinned, but not dark-skinned really enough for how the French want their black people. The American wanted a light-skinned, high yellow girl. And she was herself. She was, I think, irrepressible.
What draws you? How do you find these characters?
Often they'll come up in research for other things. Not Matthew Henson. Matthew Henson, I'd written about him before.
Basically the first
African American at the North Pole.
Yeah.
So that's Race to the Frozen North, which has been. This little book is still read and enjoyed. And I get lovely letters from children.
Because you can be an explorer too. When you read that book, you are an explorer. When you read Josephine Baker, you are the dancer.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish.
Or the trickster, Lady Cabot. You're just like, actually, you know what? It's not fair. The society's not fair. I'm going to find my own path.
I think, and obviously, I think, what's lovely to write for children is, they have that sense of what is fair and what is not fair.
It's good to hold on to that, I think, as you go through life, isn't it? Most children's authors and young adults authors have that quite deep in them. It's
You wish a lot of other people did too, really. Yeah.
Would you mind reading a little bit from this gorgeous book?
I must say, Katie Hickey did the cover.
It's a beautiful cover. I was going to ask you if you might read a little bit of chapter 8 with Josephine Baker, who has experienced being free in a non-segregated life and is actually quite famous by now.
Okay. Paris. It was the most incredible city I had ever seen. Of course, I'd never left the United States before, but I'd seen Philadelphia, New Orleans, and most importantly, New York City, the most modern city in the world. Have you ever been to Paris? Well, I expect you know it was one of the most beautiful cities on earth. It still is. The historic buildings, the river, the wide main streets, the small cobbled back streets, the shops, the clothes. My word, the incredible clothes. Such glamour and style. But for me and the whole theatre company, there was something even more beautiful. It was the fact that we could go anywhere we liked. In Paris, we could go to any cafe, any bar, shop or theatre. We could dance at nightclubs that were open to everyone regardless of colour. There were no restrictions, no signs saying whites only, no signs saying blacks not allowed. Most of us theatre folk had never seen anything like it in our lives. Paris welcomed us with open arms. After the first performance, the theatre was turned into a restaurant. It was the first time in my whole life that I had been invited to sit down and eat at a table with white people. I remember thinking this was how things should be, everywhere. People of every colour sitting down side by side and eating together, getting on. America had a lot to learn. In the show, La Revue Negre, I danced the Charleston. I wriggled and shimmied and wore necklaces of shells that crackled and rattled as I moved. And Paris loved the show. It was a smash hit. My name was in the papers. I was recognised in the street. And people sent me gifts at the theatre. Flowers, chocolates, dresses made of silk and satin. I had a telephone right by my bed. Can you imagine that? And the phone never stopped ringing. Everyone wanted to meet Josephine Baker.
I think everyone is going to want to meet this Josephine Baker in your Barrington Stoke book. Barrington Stoke's such a wonderful publisher,
I
isn't it?
know. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
It sort of sits at the edge of fiction and non-fiction because obviously it's not made up, but I'm writing, I'm writing in her voice.
Where did you do the research to?
Reading. I would like to say, yes, I went to Paris and I know that.
Yeah.
But I just read books and watched some
Read
films.
other books, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, usually the ideas I get come from reading. I'm reading something or I'm doing research for something else and I find something and I go, oh my gosh, which is usually what happens. I spent a lot of time in the autumn doing research for something which may or may not happen, but about science, which I know nothing about. I've had to watch, documentaries about electricity. There's somebody that I'm starting to write about now who I got out of the research for this novel who was a famous scientist and polymath in the 18th century. And you think, it's that, oh my gosh, did you know this?
Your radio play was called
Fresh Berries.
Fresh Berries.
It was.
I heard it actually when it was, and I remember standing in my kitchen. I didn't know that it was going to be on. And I remember like weeping because it was really about how young people long for love.
Absolutely.
And how vulnerable they are.
Yes.
In moving into sexual relationships in particular.
Yeah.
Or not knowing what love is.
Yeah.
And if they haven't had that early strong rooting in what love is, how easy it is to
the promise
be
of love.
exploited.
Yeah. And I did the research I did for that was with Barnardo's actually in a halfway house for girls under 16 who'd been exploited. And in every case, it was about love.
In that play, you're not afraid to actually say it like it is.
I think you've got to. Well, if you're a writer, even if you're writing something, you've got to say it how it is, haven't you?
Because those young people also know it and experience it.
Exactly.
But what is the point of it? Because some people will say, oh, well, yes, we know that exists, but we don't want to re-traumatise our audience, or should this be what young people read? Or
I think I want to tell a really good story. Primarily, you're reflecting the world. I think you're providing hope. You want to engage, don't you?
Yeah. It comes off the page, and then when you meet young people, which I know you do, go to a lot of school visits or festivals and things. Yeah. What have been some of the most sort of interesting and surprising things that young people have said to you? What's the response, say, to Journey to the Frozen North, for example?
Oh, well, children. I mean, I've had some lovely responses. Of course, now I'm sitting here, I can think of none. But really lovely. I've had lovely letters and lovely questions. About how cold it was, and did people really drink seal's blood, and. Also, they feel that righteous indignation for Matthew Henson because he was ignored. And I think that's the thing with that book. Every child knows that feeling of, you do something and you don't get recognised for it.
And they start to ask questions then. The young people go, well, hang on a minute. How many other people, how many other, people, Black people, Asian people, global diaspora people whose heritage started through colonialism, slavery, or many different journeys, who are here, who are born here. How many other people don't we know about?
Yeah.
And they start to want to know and ask that question, and they start to look for themselves. And that's wonderful.
I did I was really privileged to do a Great Lives for Radio 4. I think they couldn't find a grown-up Matthew Henson expert, so they got me on, because it was Dwayne Fields, who's an explorer.
Well, they were lucky to have you,
and,
Catherine.
It was lovely. I was like, yes, and I felt like a real person. I mean, you know what it's like when you are a writer. It's a privilege that you get to tell these stories and to do this, and it's lovely. But mostly in life, one is just oneself,
You've also been like a history curator in a game.
I work in a museum in the game.
You work in
I
a
work
museum?
in a museum in a game, and I said
Are you
to
the curator?
I'm the curator of the museum, not the whole game. I'm just one of many characters. But if you go into the museum on this island,
Is it called I Am Dead?
It's called I Am Dead.
Which is a good title.
Yes, it's a good. It's about somebody who is dead, and he's got a psychopomp. It's a great word. In the form of a dog called...
What's a psychopomp?
Somebody who is a messenger from the land of the dead, who takes you through, guides you. And he was the old museum keeper, but I am the new museum keeper, and you have to go around the island and collect memories. But what I say to my children...
That's like you, Catherine.
Yeah, and there's a lot of knitting stuff, because the museum's a bit like the Pitt Rivers, because I like the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford. But what I say to my children who are in their 30s is that when I am really dead, they will be able to go and visit me in the museum, and I will say the same things over and over again, just like life.
You're like your characters. You're looking at the world as it is, and you're open to exploring different opportunities.
Yeah, one thing I know about myself is I've always had that. Here I am going to rush out into the world and see what's in it. And I have been lucky and fortunate in a lot of ways, because it's quite hard to do, I think.
They have this sort of inner strength, your characters, and resilience. And when you're with them, you kind of think, I actually can make it.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I'm dancing through the stories with them. What is your next
Well, it's
book?
really hard. It's really hard, because writing a book is always a bit speculative, and it's always, I like being able to write a book which is about anything. I like the books that I do for Barrington Stoke, which are about people, and I'm doing another one of those, which...
They're sort of fictionalised biographies, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those stories, really.
I've got one of those on the needles now. I like a TV job where you're working collaboratively.
You're adapting a script, aren't you, at the moment? Is it for Black Tudors?
I did the script. It didn't. It spent a lot of time in development. It's not going to be made. Very unlikely.
I think it's quite interesting to say that, because you are doing the work.
Yeah, I did the work. I got a beautiful script out of it. It's not going to be made. It kept me, it was a very good job. I learned so much. I worked with some incredible people. I also wrote a script for the same company, which was about the Bristol bus boycott, which was supposed to, it was a give, and then it wasn't. There's lots of things you do like that. I've written more. I've written feature films that have never been made, but in a way, if it does get made, it's so unbelievable. It's but it's a living. It's still a living. I did a radio play about the Medicis, which was last year. I've done some children's stuff, children's TV. At the moment, I've got 2 book projects on the go.
It's been so lovely to be in conversation with you, Catherine.
Thank you, Sita.
I feel like we've just touched the surface of your amazing career, but it's been great to talk about your work.
Thank you.
Sita Brahmachari was talking to Catherine Johnson. To hear more writers, go to writersmosaic.org.uk.